Hello, Professor. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for allowing me to accommodate myself with this assignment. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to say thank you for a great semester. I had a really good time. So without further ado, let's get into it. The subject that I chose to complete my mood board on was gender representation in media in society. So, as I was researching what I wanted to do, I noticed that when creating a mood board, the presentation of the mood board is critical to kind of getting your point forward, getting your point across. So, I decided to organize my mood board in a different way. I took a different approach with it. I decided to put little borders around each media artifact that I chose, and each colored border has an intended meaning and purpose. So these are the classifications: orange, red, and blue. The orange borders are examples of media that have reverse and opposite gender representation roles riddled within the pieces. We can actually look at one of these. This one, for example, another student presented this one in their presentation. This artifact was a clip from Wreck-It Ralph 2, When Ralph Breaks the Internet. It took the common cliche of a damsel in distress and decided to reverse the role by showing a big, strong, masculine figure in distress. I think Disney did this in a way to get the message across of female empowerment, but they didn't do it directly, and that's what I really like about it. They decided to use the reverse gendered role. I think that was more effective because it made the audience think a little bit deeper than just the surface level kind of message of female leads, especially in movies, don't always have to fit like this. I'm in distress, I need help, I need assistance from a big, strong man kind of narrative. So that right there is an example of one of the orange borders, and it kind of helps demonstrate like what my approach was with the rest of them. We can dive into another color here, this one right here. So moving forward onto some of more of the other borders that I decided to use. The red borders are examples of modern gender representation. For example, we can take this one. This is a clip from a children's TV reboot of Transformers. I found it kind of funny that they decided to use the Transformers series to kind of bring that message across. I think it's very fitting for what they were trying to say here. They address the topic of pronouns, the proper way to address people's gender, what they identify as in modern society, and it's a good message, especially in a world that's growing, adapting, and changing. So that's one media artifact that I found that was very fitting for the red border. Now we can talk about the final border that I chose, which was the blue ones. And the blue ones are examples of traditional gender representation in media artifacts. It's more common in older media artifacts, things of the past generation, and also examples of things in the modern generation as well. So for example, one of these I found particularly interesting was a little snippet from the magazine Good Housekeeping. Back in the 60s, they kind of took an approach where they showed kind of like a black and white comparison versus a color comparison. And that this kind of approach is taken in a lot of TV infomercials that I used to watch growing up. You know, they would show a product or a person trying to use a product, and it's very ineffective. You know, they're very frustrated. And then they transition to show their product, which is kind of shown in a more light, more colorful way. And they'll literally change the color to kind of show that their product is better. And I think that they use this approach in this snippet. The main point and purpose of this was to show that a man would struggle operating a successful kitchen in his household alone without the presence of a woman, and that the woman's role of cooking for a household is very important. And it shows here, even down below, specifically it says man on his own, and you can tell that he's playing with the stove here. He doesn't really know what exactly that he's doing. And then you have the confident woman over here who's baked, you know, numerous, you know, delectable baked goods, and, you know, kind of shows that she definitely is, you know, knows what she's doing, and that she's very fitting. And so that's an example of a blue border. So now that I kind of laid out to you how I kind of structured this mood board, now we can go into it with the full understanding, and I can kind of talk about my personal thoughts and reflections as I was studying these pieces and what I kind of took away from them, the biggest takeaways about society as a whole and gender representation in modern media. One of the ones that I found particularly interesting and one that I have a little bit more of a personal connection with was the TV show as a whole, The Amazing World of Gumball. And in Gumball, it displays differentiating parental roles in a household and represents characters of many different genders. There's a lot of characters that are non-binary, a few characters that are transgender, and the household that Gumball lives in, they live in a two-parent household where the wife is the one who is working and the father takes on the stay-at-home role, kind of watching over the kids and doing more of the raising of the children's task while the mother kind of brings home the income and things like that. And I thought that this was really interesting because I actually know a lot of my friends growing up had similar household structures where their mom was the one that was working and the dad was the one that was staying at home and raising the children and, you know, doing a lot of the household duties. And I feel like it was a really good idea for Cartoon Network to kind of create this show in this way and structure it in this way to kind of display a family with this kind of household dynamic. I think that it's more common in modern societies to have family dynamics that are built like this, where the female lead of the house is bringing in a majority of the income, actually. I think it's also a push towards female education. Nicole Watterson is the name of the character, and she is seen working a few different jobs, and she has a college degree and things like that. The show overall shows opposing gender roles very well. It's a very positive representation of these roles. You know, it doesn't spend a lot of time, it's not hyper fixated on it. You know, it's never talking about how it's a problematic issue in society or things like that. It's displayed in a very natural format where you can kind of, it hints towards it, but it doesn't become the driving purpose behind the show. And I think that's a great way for media to kind of relay these messages in a positive way. I think I'll briefly touch on a few of the artifacts, but the ones that I specifically kind of had a good connection with, I'll talk about a little bit more, provide a little bit more commentary. One of the things that I noticed a lot while I was creating this mood board and looking for artifacts is that there is a greater variety of gender representation in children's media. And I took it upon myself to kind of ask why that might be. Whereas there's less gender representation, or you could say less of a pull for differentiating gender representation in other pieces of media like movies and books and even like things like commercials. But it was specifically a strong push for diverse gender representation within TV shows, which here's another one that aired on Nickelodeon called Bella and the Bulldogs, which is about a young female girl who wants to go and try out for her local football team. And she ends up getting a spot on the team and not only getting able to play, but to be the starting quarterback, which is a narrative that is not heard of a lot, especially within the realm of sports. I'm pretty well versed within the realm of sports and how gender representation kind of plays with that, with like female viewership, Title IX things as well, making sure that both men and women are equally acquitted in sports. But within this show, Bella and the Bulldogs, they use a male-dominated sport to kind of show, paint a narrative of gender inclusion and to defy gender norms. And I think that they did it in a good way. I wasn't able to watch a lot of the show. I was able to see a few episodes of the show. Unlike an artifact like The Amazing World of Gumball, the driving factor of this show, there is a girl in the highest position on a football team. And I think that that's where the main concept of the show comes from. And that's definitely where, in a lot of the episodes that they aired, that's like the main kind of storyline of the show. You know, that's what the story is rooted upon, is that here's Bella, she's the quarterback of the football team. Moving on to a non-traditional gender role, we have this book that I found within the series Kung Fu Panda 3. Now, if you've watched any of the Kung Fu Panda movies, you know that in the third movie, Po ends up finding his biological family, and in doing so, he ends up having two dads. As I stated earlier, it is an element of the story, but it stays as a side element. Whereas in this example, in this level 2 children's book, they kind of briefly discuss Poe's two dads and being a part of a two-father household, which is a classic gender representation with an underrepresented household style of two fathers. To kind of wrap things up, we can go over into this corner where we have the classic superhero Aquaman. Aquaman is a very clearly masculine figure. The character that he kind of embodies is just pure testosterone as a man. And it's a piece even in modern media where a lot of movies have kind of taken the approach to kind of put a little bit of a modern twist. For example, like the Beauty and the Beast, it did a few twists of the gender roles within the classic version and the rebooted live action version. I know Disney's been very well known for doing that. Whereas in this one, they decided to kind of keep it as is. It is very straightforward, shows the very traditional gender role of a strong masculine male hero. Now, I think that this did it very well. I don't think that there's an issue with strong masculine male figures in media. I think that how they are portrayed is especially important. I think that they should also kind of coincide in saying that they're strong, but they're not better. They're not stronger. They just are strong. So there's not a lot to discuss, at least for this artifact. I think it's very, it's good. It's, yeah, I wouldn't say it challenges anything in society. I wouldn't say it reinforces anything that was already in place. I think it's a good story, great hero. To kind of conclude, I would say that as I was studying this, I learned a lot of things about more non-traditional roles in gender and media, and even towards sexuality, to briefly touch on this one right here. This is a character from this TV series Euphoria, and Euphoria gained a lot of attention, a lot of traction earlier on, back in 2021, I believe. And Jules Vaughn, the character that's within the show, showcases and addresses transgender people in a society and portrays them in a very similar way to everyday life. And I think that it kind of goes to be like an ambassador for trans rights and things like that. And also briefly in the show Euphoria touches a lot about sexuality, differentiating sexualities, and what that looks like. And I think that the show Euphoria was to kind of show like a harsh truth kind of piece of media. That's the kind of narrative that Euphoria takes on. It's a drama. It shows, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly side of things. And I think that that is it's hard for people to kind of take in, but I think that it is important to kind of, you know, address and speak out what certain people may be feeling like in their day-to-day life in society. I think Jules Vaughn kind of is a figure that a lot of people kind of look up to, that when they feel similar to her, people that feel very similar to her kind of look up to her as, you know, being a character that is, like them. They can kind of find similarities, find connections with them. So I think Euphoria does a really good job of keeping it real, as I would say. But overall, to conclude, I would say, as I was studying this whole thing, that gender roles, they can be put in pieces of media very subtly, very, very passively, and also be effective. And they could also, on the other hand, be put in being the driving factor and be ineffective. It's all about the story, all about how you put it, all about how you want, how much you want the gender representation to tell the story in your media. And I think that it's important that we keep up the variety as it creates good content to watch. Watching traditional roles in society, it gets kind of lonely. It gets kind of boring after a while, seeing the same stories kind of play out over and over and over again. That common damsel in distress, it's a very predictable theme, and as movies kind of evolve, and as media evolves, and as the world and society evolve, it's important that they all shift together as one, is what I kind of have as my final thoughts, final takeaways. I think that we are moving closer to a good, positive representation of all genders, of all sexualities in society. But yeah, so thank you, Professor. I hope you enjoyed it, and take care.